This sounds impossible, but it actually happened. In October of 1972, a plane carrying a rugby team, their friends and family members took off from Uruguay. Their destination was Chile. On board were 45 people. Most of them were young, excited, and looking forward to the trip ahead. No one knew they were about to become part of one of the greatest survival stories ever told. As the plane crossed the Andes Mountains, weather conditions began to worsen. Clouds surrounded the aircraft. Visibility dropped. The pilots struggled to navigate through the massive mountain range. Then, everything went wrong. The pilots believed they had already cleared the mountains. They began descending, but they were still surrounded by towering peaks. Suddenly, the aircraft slammed into a mountain. The impact ripped away one wing, then the other. The tail section tore off. Passengers were thrown through the cabin. Luggage flew everywhere. The plane was breaking apart. The remaining fuselage began sliding down a snowy mountainside at incredible speed. Finally, it came to a stop. The crash had happened more than 11,000 feet above sea level, deep within the Andes Mountains. Many passengers died instantly. Others were severely injured. Those who survived looked around in disbelief. They were stranded in one of the harshest environments on Earth. Snow stretched in every direction, towering mountains surrounded them, and temperatures dropped well below freezing. At first, the survivors believed rescue teams would arrive quickly. After all, a missing plane would certainly be found, right? But days passed, then more days. No rescuers came. The group used pieces of the wreckage as shelter. They huddled together at night to stay warm. Food quickly became a problem. There were only a few chocolate bars, a small amount of wine, and some snacks. The supplies disappeared fast. Soon, they were starving. Several survivors attempted to hike out of the mountains, but every direction looked impossible. The peaks were enormous. The cold was relentless. The thin air made every step exhausting. They always returned to the wreckage. Weeks passed. Then disaster struck again. One night, a massive avalanche crashed down the mountain. Snow buried the fuselage. Several survivors were trapped inside. Others suffocated before they could be rescued. The survivors who remained felt hopeless, but they refused to give up. One day, they managed to repair a small radio. What they heard changed everything. The search for the missing plane had been called off. Rescuers had stopped looking. The world believed everyone on board was already dead. For many, it was the darkest moment of the entire ordeal. But instead of giving up, they made a decision. If nobody was coming, they would have to save themselves. The mountains offered no food, no plants, no animals, nothing. The survivors faced an impossible choice, a choice that would haunt them forever. Using the only source of nutrition available, they found a way to stay alive. It was a decision born from desperation and survival. Without it, none of them would have made it. As the weeks turned into months, two survivors named Nando Parado and Roberto Canessa decided they would attempt the impossible. They would cross the Andes Mountains on foot. No maps, no climbing equipment, no guarantee of survival, only hope. For days, they climbed through snow-covered peaks. Higher and higher, the mountains seemed endless. Then, after one final climb, they saw something incredible. On the far side of the mountains, there were green valleys, rivers, life. For the first time in over 2 months, they knew rescue was possible. The pair continued walking. Eventually, they spotted a Chilean rancher across a river. The man could not hear them over the rushing water, so they wrote a message wrapped it around a rock, and threw it across the river. The rancher read the note, then immediately went for help. Rescue teams were dispatched. Helicopters flew into the mountains. 72 days after the crash, the remaining survivors were finally rescued. Out of the 45 people who boarded the plane, 16 survived, against impossible odds. Today, the Andes plane crash is remembered as one of the greatest survival stories in human history. A story of courage, determination, and the incredible will to live. And yes, this is a true story.